I'm Karen from Lochalsh Community Response, and we are organised through the Kyle and Lochalsh Community Trust, and we've got Nicholash from, well, he can introduce himself, from the Growers Hub over in Broadford.
No worries. Well, hello everyone, welcome. My name's Nicholash Kelly. I'm the project coordinator for the Growers Hub project. It's funded by all these brilliant people, and yeah, we have a 5-year sort of project currently in its 3rd year, which is the current one supported by the big lottery, and this sort of strand of the project is about health and well-being and mental health and support. So it's kind of changed from what the original sort of project, which was about climate challenge fund, had sort of built the site, and it was all about reducing waste and reducing the need to buy from the co-op and shops. So the site was cleared. It was an old forestry woodland site. It's a terrible growing place. It's just awful. So we've had to do a lot of raised beds. Yeah, which I'll show you once we get down. And yeah, so the site, as you can see, it's been quite a development from a cleared felled woodland of some oak trees that the primary school started when we first bought the land, maybe about 8 years ago now. So they're well established. We have some sort of compost bays, one for some fresh manure from Torrin, some topsoil from Torrin, and then our green waste, which is all looking a bit untidy. But yeah, so that's all our green waste. We have another project that kind of runs alongside the Growers Hub, and it's called Corrie Capers, and it's a sort of outdoor learning project for primary school children after school and in holidays. So yeah, they're based sort of behind our office building over in the woods over there. And sort of my role as the coordinator, I sort of in charge of the sort of managing the site, the maintenance. I run the school growing groups. So I have a high school group that come down from Portree High, and then we have groups from Broadford Primary that come in and do some growing their own vegetables. And I'm also in charge of coordinating the new men's shed. I'll try and let you have a nosy. So this is not quite horticulture, but nevertheless they do their part, some garden furniture and whatnot. So yeah, great wee setup. So the allotments, which was sort of the original project for the site, has around 20 folk using it, 20 different families, all sorts of backgrounds, from those that have had allotments from down south and in the central belt, to those that have never grown anything in their lives. So it's a great wee sort of cluster of skills and abilities, and it's great when some new people come in who don't have a Scooby what they're doing, and then people are passing on tips and helpful bits of information on how to grow their own. So this sort of little section was our first bit that we created. The tunnels were recycled from slate originally, because the whole project was trying to reuse, recycle, reduce your carbon footprint, and sort of help the planet. So yeah, we've done quite this area is probably about 6 years old now. So yeah, it's done quite well. So in this tunnel we've got about three different families, each growing their own each growing their own thing in their own way. And yeah, I think everyone's always quite happy the way they're doing things themselves, which is quite good. Some strawberries, tomatoes, lots of tomatoes. So yeah, it's good that everyone does their own thing and everyone gets on quite well. And at the moment we do have some COVID, the washed out rules. You know, we're only allowed one person in each tunnel at the moment by themselves, or one household in the tunnel at the moment. And then this kind of goes, leads on to our biggest tunnel. This was actually originally bought quite some time ago by the West Highland College for their crofting course, which I think is now called the Rural Skills. And they built this in our first sort of winter after the site was sort of, the groundworks was done. So this it's probably about coming up to 15 years old, but it did sit in a container for quite some time, which didn't do the polythene a huge amount of good, because it's starting to break at the seams, which for its life it shouldn't really have got that far, you know, that bad. So we're recovering it with this year's Rural Skills class, hopefully in September. So that'll because we've got quite a few. I don't know if you can see at the back. We have a few holes that have been taped up. So in this tunnel, we have at the front here this sort of space. Heather McNeil uses this kind of area for her Rural Skills class. I also use it for school groups, and yeah, the allotments folks sometimes have their wee break or their cup of tea, or so it's quite a nice wee handy area, wee potting up area. My first sort of high school group built these sort of potting up bays, which were quite handy. Bit of woodwork skills, and they did that with one of the actual allotment guys, who was sort of being a sort of support tutor for some woodcraft skills and stuff. So in here we've also got another 9 folk sort of using plots. We're not an ordinary allotment style as you would get maybe in the central belt. It's raised beds. You buy a raised bed. Usually you get an inside one and an outside one, and you pay a minimal rent. So for inside it's £4.50 per square metre, and for outside beds it's £3.50 per square metre. So it's very manageable, pretty cheap, and that money that's generated from there goes towards cost of things like recovering, paths, and sort of general maintenance for the site.
Sorry, Nicholas, it's Karen. Is that a monthly fee, or is that the annual?
Annual. It's an annual fee.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I think like Ian, for example, this gentleman here has 2 plots, and he's got an outside, one of the bigger ones outside, and I think he pays about, whatever it is, £54 a year or something. So yeah, it's pretty cheap, so it's quite good. And you know, we on the original sort of round of funding that we had, we ran quite a lot of kind of similar to what this is, but a bit more sophisticated than me just wandering around. But we had quite a lot of classes: polytunnel construction, raised beds, some proper horticultural classes that we got tutors in from far and wide. Donald Murdy from up the north end of the island, brilliant horticulturist, and brilliant polytunnel construction. So yeah, we did quite a lot of learning at the beginning as well. I probably should say my own background is horticulture. I've got an HND in amenity horticulture. So I've always, since I left school and before I left school, I've always done gardening. So yeah, that's probably why I got the job. So yeah, we've had a few people that not keeping up with their plots and stuff, so we quite often have to deal with things like that as well. But yeah, huge production of veg comes out. We did have to record the amount of the quantity of veg being produced here to sort of offset, to show the funders how much how much sort of carbon we were sort of saving from people growing it here rather than coming from down south or abroad. So yeah, it was amazing the quantity of food that we were producing, and that was just with that tunnel, this one, and I think it was the next one at the time when we had to do that, and it was amazing the volume of food that we had. We had a few other little sort of projects that went alongside the sort of original from the Climate Challenge Fund. There was a composting program that happened with the local sort of hotels and restaurants. So they were putting their food waste into their hot bins. There's one just there. They're very good compost bins, but probably not good for an allotment sort of situation where you've got, for example, this one there supports 9 different people, and some will come in and blitz their bed, sort of seeding lettuces, or and it's just, they're not designed for bulk quantities at any one time. It's small household waste, your wee bucket that you get in your kitchen, and bits of paper, cardboard. So yeah, hot bins, they're brilliant for a household, but probably not for a sort of environment here. I wish I'd probably just got some brown bins or something like that for all the green waste. But they do produce good compost. We had quite a lot this year that we've sort of used as a soil conditioner for a few of our other beds. So yeah, Climate Challenge Fund at the beginning. We also had a wood recycling project, and where the men's shed is situated, we kind of used that original shed overhang for wood recycling. So the local joiners would come and dump off their wood. We would then reuse it for building more raised beds, bit of maintenance, and then people were using it for kindling and taking that kind of stuff away. So all about reducing waste. The sort of community company sort of goal is about environment, saving the environment. So most of our projects are all geared around doing, making a better world, as it were. So that's kind of where this project sort of came from. So yeah, that's this tunnel.
There was a question that popped up when you were talking about the polythene or the covering on the polytunnel degrading. How long should a polytunnel? How long would you expect it to last?
So, for example, like Donald Murdy, who helped put this one up, his one, they usually should last about 20 years if you look after it, and particularly this bit of site where this tunnel went in, it was just a swamp. I mean, when I was marking out where everything was going and sort of putting out the sort of site plan, I over in that sort of that corner over there, I almost was going to have to call someone for help because 3/4 of my leg just disappeared into a peat bog. So it literally sits on a wetland kind of thing. But the tunnel itself, we had to do a bit higher spec when it came to like the concreting side of things, particularly at the bottom end. We had to redo some of the more structural things. So we had to put in some more structural, like that isn't the original. We had to put a cross beam in. You can see the holes starting to appear, and they're going along the sort of seam, as well as another one up there. But yeah, we had to put in extra concreting, particularly for the climate. Like all these posts, you can see there, were concreted in. Another one here, another one there, and another one. So we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different posts concreted in at this end to try and tackle the bog and B, the wind, to help keep the structure sound. So yeah, they should last, provided you put them up well and look after them. Like if there's a wee tear, you get your polytunnel tape and you quickly repair it before it can spread. Like the ones at the bottom, we've tried to tape as best we can, but it was a storm that really took off. So yeah, I'll maybe talk about, whilst we're talking about the tunnels. So like obviously the big tunnel there, the tubes, the frame is 50mm tubing, and you know it's quite a structure. Whereas the tunnel over there, behind the big one there, is only 35, and this one is also 35. Now these ones were recycled, so they were great, but probably where these two are, they're very sheltered. I think if this was somewhere else, a wee bit more exposed area, I have a feeling this kind of one would, for the climate that we have up here, I think it would have probably been blown over. We kind of also had to sort of makeshift some doors. So these aren't obviously the original sliding doors that would be on an ordinary polytunnel. So this is a bit of a makeshift tunnel, but it does the job, and it produces a lot of food. I'll go on to the next tunnel, which is, personally, if I was buying a tunnel for my house, for myself to grow, I'd probably get one of these. So they're 50mm tubes. I'm quite glad because we just spent this week on the flat cam hot day when the sun was blaring. We tightened this one up. It got very slack. This is my primary, my school group ones. So we had to redo the bottom wood there. We had to take all that off, try and tighten. We loosened off all the inside beams, which is all in the inside the tunnel. So there's 1, 2, I think 3 on this one. Loosen them all off so the structure kind of comes down a bit, and then we then tightened the wood, strapped the wood, nailed the wood back in. One wee tip if you're doing it is keep the nail just ever so slightly out. Now on the old bit of wood that we had to take off on Tuesday there, we got 3/4 of it off, but then that end one, because it was students that built it and they did a great job, but they hammered the nails all the way in. So I find that bit of wood quite difficult to get off, and probably did a wee bit of damage whilst trying to do it. So that's just a tiny wee, it's just to keep the nail just ever so such so you can get a hammer in it and take it off. There's a wee example of some polytunnel tape and there's an example of not putting some tape on. So I need to fix that. So yeah, these ones, all our polytunnels come from Highland Polytunnels. There's sort of a subgroup to, I think, the ones that are down in Yorkshire, I think. I forget what they're called. But these are called Highland Polytunnels. Miles, brilliant chap, he'll help everyone out. So yeah, these ones are fantastic. And in fact, we've got a newer model, which I'll show you. And yeah, they're a much stronger, more resilient tunnel. Tubes are 50mm, so they last longer, and they've got this extra support beams going across, sort of storm proofing it's called. And so far so good, touch wood. So yeah, this is, you know, these are my favourite tunnels. Not too big, not too small. The doors allow decent amount of ventilation, you know, because a lot of people think get the tunnel as hot as possible, it'll grow quicker, but ventilation is so important when going, as I'm sure many of you know. So yeah, these things do quite well. I maybe just explain, there's a couple of sort of random posts. So there's one here, one there, and one there, and then there's some more over there. It's basically for our hose system so that it doesn't get clogged up. So when you're going along and you need to water, it hits off the quite handy wee tip. Makes life so much easier. I should say maybe talk about our water supply. I'll come back to that. Someone asked me about that. So yeah, that's the sort of stormproofing. I want to go show you our newest tunnel that we got with a bit of COVID response grant. So HIE provided us with some money to build. That's another one, sorry, I should say. Another sort of stormproof. Now, whilst I'm here, can you see on the top of the polytunnel, it arches ever so slightly? That shows how the tension of it is far greater. I mean, we've just done this one and the boys were the teenage guys that we have working were quite pleased with themselves. But before, the roof of this tunnel was actually flat because it was that slack. So the sign of a good, well-built polytunnel is you have these little dips. And I'll show you because we had some lads from down in Yorkshire come up and build, and they do this on a daily basis. But they did this one, which is our newest tunnel. So it's only about a month old, but you can see the how tight that is, and it's a brilliant polytunnel. One slight thing I would say when ordering your polythene is try and go for the more clearer stuff rather than the solid white. I'm just trying to see if anyone's asked that. Northern Polytunnels that's Joe, I think. Yes, that's the big company. So yeah, Highland Polytunnels is their sort of outlet for up here. So yeah, he's quite good. What sort of price is the polytunnel you recommend? Well, this one here, right, is probably about 1,200 to buy, and then it's about another grand and a bit to have these guys come and build it. And if you can afford it, do it. Highly recommend it. It's great that, I mean, I've never put a polytunnel up by myself or with a mate. I've always had a group of people able to come and help, either the students or volunteer days or courses. But yeah, it's quite tough going and, you know, getting the levels. So it's always good to have someone to sort of fall back on. So yeah, you're probably talking. Oh,
Can I
yeah,
just
go ahead.
ask, Nick, sorry, when you're talking about them coming in to do
Build.
it, so did they help with levelling the site and making sure it was sort of ready to
Well,
go?
you have to have, there's a few sort of stipulations if you do get someone into it. You have to provide 40 bags of postcrete for them to use, and you have to have the site reasonably prepared. Now, obviously we'd had diggers in years ago and sort of made the place reasonably flat, but on the area that it's on, it does slope quite a bit. I'm sure you can sort of see the slight gradient. Originally, I actually wanted the polytunnel to be quite close up, almost in line with the big one behind it, but the gradient was so much, and there would be like a foot down at that bottom bit. So it made more sense to push it down, which is a wee bit unfortunate because it's a lot wetter down in that corner over there. So yeah, we've literally just done this, and one slight difference between this one and these ones here is the doors are ever so slightly smaller, but they've got this really handy clip, and so they lock, whereas the other ones in a bit of wind slowly open with ever so slightly bit of wind. So I actually have to get wee bits of wood and just stuff them in so that the doors don't sort of slowly rattle open. So that's quite a handy wee extra that's on these tunnels. Yeah, so it just slides along, I hope, and then clicks in. Is it right? Yeah. I'm doing my left hand. Yeah, and would just, there's a wee stone there. But yeah, they clip in and stops the wind blowing them open, particularly in storms. So yeah, we've got new people going to start using this. How big is the polytunnel? I forget what feet it is, but you can sort of get a rough idea of the size. But there's loads on the Highland on their websites. Just depends what sort of budget.
Would you say for would you recommend a particular size for domestic use, or would it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I you know, for the area that you have inside them, and I mean, I try to make as much area for growing as possible. So this is why I've done it in this sort of format. Everyone's like, even in there, some folk have changed my original raised beds to suit themselves, and possibly putting some little paths in between. I mean, one lady split hers into 4 wee ones. But, I mean, she's 65, 70. That's her way of managing her bit of her plot. But we want to try and maximise the amount of growing space, and so we've kind of put a small path in just so that you can manage it. Possibly, and I don't do it, but possibly try and recommend is that you do split maybe the raised bed inside in half, so that you do have a different soil. You know, there's no soil connection between the two beds, because sometimes, say, you had tomatoes in here and they got a virus. That virus is going to be in that soil. So the following year you'd put your tomatoes in there because this one has the virus. So you'd want to try and have some sort of difference. But so far so good. No one's had any disasters. Wee bit of practical things is putting a membrane down the backs so that your weeds and your rushes don't grow up. Just a small hint, try and keep maintenance down. I'll just try and have a nosy, see what's in the chat.
Yeah, there's someone asking just there about, are the beds set on earth or are they on hard standing?
No, so this is the greenery that you see is basically the same as what's here and what's there. We just plonked it on top, basically. We put a line in, we use the doors as your guide, a line in there and a line in there, and worked our way back to the edge of the tunnels. And yeah, it's not, I mean, if it was a landscaping job, I would have had lines going right, left and centre, and the whole thing would be exactly, you know, down to the mills. But like the rest of the site, it's just a bit rough and ready. And, you know, the lads were learning. So I kind of guided them, and then they did, you know, so like it's not exactly neat and tidy, but it does the job. And it's done the job for 6 years with everyone else. So yeah.
When we were talking about the having it on a flat surface, it's not, obviously it's easier to grow when things are flat, but I'm just thinking, there's a polytunnel up Salahy, and every time I drive past it, I just think it's amazing what they've done, because there must be at least a metre between one side of the polytunnel and the other side of the polytunnel.
Right. Okay.
And I'm not quite sure how they've done it, but
I mean,
it does show.
This tunnel, our Flourish project, so mental health wellbeing, I'll get to that one, but it's on quite a big gradient. It goes down, and we built it at an angle rather than that bit being totally level and going all the, you know, it would probably be about 3 foot higher at that end, but we just did it on what the gradient of the land was. The college put this one up. So yeah, you just have to see what the terrain you've got. I mean, we did have to dig out quite a bit. I mean, you can see some of the spoil being dumped in here, so we did have to change bits along there. And another wee thing, and I'll maybe try and load up a picture of it. So when your polytunnel's built, you usually have about maybe 1-2 foot, good 2 foot, maybe 2.5 foot of polythene left over wait till I go back to the, yeah. So you usually got quite a lot of, usually comes out to about there. So what I did here, just because this particular bit of land is absolutely soaking. Like I can, if I go down here, you can actually see it here, but it is so soft and spongy. And it's just terrible ground, really. You'd never want to grow anything or build anything, but it's so soft. And we found over here, and you can actually see some of the green algae mottling, that just kind of puddles up because we never put in a drain down the side of that big tunnel. Whereas here, I have put a ditch just about a spade's width out from the edge of the tunnel. So it's good paint. So there's a ditch about a spade's width here and a spade's depth going all the way up. And I put the polythene into it, a bit of geotext, and then I filled the channel with gravel, and then we built the path as normal on top. So we've got one that comes out here. So it's just a gravel thing, and then we've got another one that comes out there. And on a really, really wet day, it comes out. Because obviously there's quite a lot of surface water coming down, goes into this channel, and in theory goes out. So drainage around it is quite important, especially if it's a swamp like this. So yeah. Whilst we're here, I'll just introduce you to our newest members. Katie and Sally are here to turn up this bit of waste. So this is what the original site looked like before we had diggers, before we had anything in it. Rushes, brambles, gorse, a lot of gorse, and lots of tree stumps. So long term is obviously community company's probably going to develop this, either extension to campsite or extension to the allotments, depending on what pockets of money. So Katie and Sally, I think this is Sally, are doing exactly what they're doing right now and tearing up the ground to hopefully be reused. I don't know where the other one is, but yeah, they're doing their job. What's your favourite tunnel size? My favourite is these ones. They, if I was to be making food for my house, it'd be one of those. It's not too big, it's not too small, and it's manageable for people's time. They take up a lot of time. People are working, people are busy normally now with lockdown, and yeah, like we've had a family come in at the beginning of lockdown. We're using one of the school plots. Now everyone's back to work. They have no time to look after it. Well, they try their best, but they quite struggle to actually look after it. Busy lives, big family, all the rest of it. So it can be quite time consuming. So that's my favourite part. How big? Polycrubs. We're going to look into one for the tunnel, the bigger tunnel that's on the other side. But they were just a wee bit too expensive, and our budget couldn't. The grant that we got we couldn't afford it. So, as far as I'm aware, anything that I've read, they're very good, sturdy, manageable, and they'll last. They'll last quite some time.
Yeah, just for anyone who's not heard of a polycrub before, they're a polytunnel, I guess, that was invented in Shetland, so built to withstand it, and it's a very hard material, so it doesn't have as much flex as the sheets there. Do you? You probably know a bit more about it than I do.
Yeah. So they're like solid. It's actually, I think they're old fish farm tubing. So they're quite substantial tubes, much bigger than the metal tubes here, probably double the size. Obviously bent over, and yeah, they're sort of, trying to think, they remind me of the old-fashioned crofting byres that used to get the round ones. That's kind of what kind of style they are. Did I miss what size you'd recommend, perhaps for measurements of one of the tunnels, so I gauge the size? I will try and remember what that size is.
It's something, if you
24,
can...
I think it's yeah, I think it's 24 foot by 14 foot, roughly, I think. So yeah, it's not huge, these ones. This one's a bit more substantial. I'll just show you this polytunnel. Polycubs fish around carbonate. Polycarbonate sheets is what the polycubs are made of. Laura Ramsbottom said that. So this is our Pride and Joy tunnel. This is our Flourish project. It's a horticultural sort of therapy sessions. We have Judy Finlay, local lady. It comes in for about 6 or 7 hours a week, and usually, obviously, not just now, whilst COVID's happening, runs sessions for maybe folk that are out of work, a bit depressed, maybe needing somewhere to go and sort of chat, but also be learning and doing something physical and some, physical work. So yeah, it's been a unbelievably huge success. Flourish. It's benefited. I think we've had about 25 people properly gone through the books, as it were, for the last sort of 2-3 years. Obviously, the last 4 months not, but yeah, it's been phenomenal. So these raised beds were sort of designed to be a bit more manageable, but easier to work with. Enough space for potentially a wheelchair to go around, and yeah, much easier to work with. This is our only tunnel that we actually have an irrigation system, just because of the time it would take to water everything, and it's just a sort of pipe system that comes off. It's got a wee timer. So this was week 1 and 2 of lockdown, where I spent and put in the system, and for this bit, they're about 1 meter width, and we've got 3 tubes, and then this one has 4 tubes. It's 1.5 meters. Again, Highland Polytunnels pointing me in the right direction to Northern Polytunnels, who have quite a lot of irrigation systems that you can use. So in here we've had all sorts. You've missed the corn on the cob, which was unbelievably amazing, so tasty. Some peppers. Beetroot has been so popular with folk. The last couple of months we've actually been opening up on a Saturday for folk to come in and sort of help themselves, just because the produce would be going to waste. Tomatoes are looking a wee bit sad, but huge amount of tomatoes have gone out so far, and there's loads more on the way. Cucumbers, loads of them. We've also had some amazing, they're sort of half wild, but they were grown from seed by the Flourish participants. But the taste of them was, I haven't tasted strawberries like that in a long time. I'm trying to see if there's any, but they're sort of almost half wild, half sort of production ones. Delicious. Loads of cucumbers. Strangling them, huge ones, sort of hiding underneath. We've done quite a lot of salads this year. So rocket. This is about our 7th batch, and we use that for our hot meals share. We've got a sort of every Wednesday we do hot meals for those in need, and yeah, a wee bag of home salad goes with them. Some pak choy, which is horrifically going to seed, but we've had broad beans in there, we've had peas in there, we've had lettuce in there, rocket in there, and now pak choy has gone in there. So I think the soil's needing a wee bit of conditioning. Some more salads, herbs, loads of chard, some courgettes. And I should actually show you Judy's Pride and Joy, but we've got some eggplants actually growing as well, some aubergines, which are looking really healthy. Beautiful flower. So yeah, it's a really nice plant. It's a shame it's not an ornamental because it's lovely. And we've got, I forget what it's called, someone could maybe remind me. Yeah, there's a wee bit of success. I forget what it's called. Again, that was a... Yes, that's it. Well done. And yeah, we experiment that Judy did, and surprisingly, we just kind of plonked it in, but it's doing really well. We thought it wouldn't, just with it being next to the door, because the door's obviously open, and our prevailing wind comes from the west. But surprisingly, it's done all right. So, yeah.
Well, while you're talking about prevailing wind there was a question sort of further back near the start about windbreaks. What are you using for windbreaks?
Okay, so, well, the design of the site, we have this mass, it was trimmed, but so we actually put this whole bund in. Now that's full of old tree stumps, all the waste that the poor John McKinnon Groundworks, Torrin, very good at his job, did when he cleared the site. Because I think originally we would have been about maybe a good foot or two underground, but he had to clear basically the first couple of feet. So all that was scraped and put into this bund, planted with willow the first year to create a decent solid windbreak. So we've got willow on this side, and then on the other side there's also more willow being planted. And then we've got kind of almost a sort of 6-7 foot at the back there, basically a wee sort of avenue of hedges. I trim them once a year just to keep them sort of up to the sort of height of the deer fence and no more, just to break off that that wind. Our prevailing wind comes from sort of over behind Bennically there. So yeah, but whilst we're talking about wind, Donald Murdy's sort of advice, I got him down originally to see where the tunnels and how they should be positioned. So we don't have any, our prevailing wind is obviously over there, so that each of the tunnels are all in a sort of almost a straight formation, apart from that wee one. But again, each of the corners hits the prevailing wind. So rather than one of the flat edges, like one of the sides hitting it, it kind of gets split into by a corner. So like obviously the wind would come in from there, hit that corner, and then it's not sort of hitting a mass, one of the ends or the sides. Some nice sweet peas. So I should, whilst we're here, I'll just quickly talk about the irrigation. I'm going to show you our I'll walk up there. But this particular irrigation is actually coming off the campsite and is mains water, mainly because it's going obviously through a wee pump and through some tubing, and it's a drip system. If we used our original site water, which is coming from a burn, these tubes and stuff would get clogged up with peat and slime and gunk, which is good for the plants, but not good for an irrigation system. I'll just have a nose in chat before I disappear. Polytunnels. Fruit trees. We've got aubergines look good. Yeah, they do look good. Although last year the aubergines, whilst we talked about them, and earwigs got into them. They looked amazing, and then there was one quite some size. So Judy was like, "Right, I'm taking that home. I'm gonna have it for my dinner." And she cut into it, and most of the inside had been eaten or chewed off by an earwig, and there was just the tiniest wee hole. It was hardly noticeable, but yeah, the whole thing was just, yeah. So she's touching wood that this year they won't get eaten by earwigs. I should say that we had a lot of really good onions. We've had red onions and ordinary onions. They did extremely well. We got the wee sets from Duncraig this year. We had a wee bit of extra money from an award, so we bought some onions, which have done brilliantly and served a lot of meals for our hot meal scheme. So yeah, fruit trees do well inside. Our chairperson Alison, she's got a wee plot inside that tunnel. She had some blueberries, and they do really good inside. I don't think anyone else has actually got any fruit trees inside their plots. Most people have them outside. I will show you Heidi's black currants. She's got one bed set aside. So she's got, these are raspberry ones, and then black currants. Usually there's a net over them to stop the birds eating them. But yeah, really good. bit of manure back in January, February, and yeah, a wee bit of pruning each year. They do really well. And the raspberries, although these ones are quite new, but nevertheless she's had quite a few. I did as a wee project with a few teenagers. We did some tyres with raspberries in them. They haven't really done well, and I just haven't had time to look after them. But it has got one or two. But I think the tyres actually get too hot for the root system, and I probably shouldn't really be using tyres for food production. I think they start leaching and things like that. So we don't really use the tyres for any production anymore, because they'll be going at some point when we get round to it.
Just while you're walking past was that a hot bin you were walking past there as well?
Yes.
There was a couple of questions at the start about that as well. Is there a particular brand that you would recommend?
Well, if it's just for you and your house, your wee house and your kitchen, yes, I have one of these at my house and it does great. But it's me and my flatmate just putting, make soup or dinner vegetables, things like that. They're brilliant. But like the other day we blitzed inside this tunnel. There's loads of corn gone out of here and filled up. It's not ideal. That's not the way they should be working. But they are good if they're managed on a daily basis, small amounts, looking after it.
And did you say that you'd given them to the local hotels?
Yeah, it was a small scheme. We bought like 20 of them. Each of the hotels and restaurants had them. Like the Co-op had 2, but like they'd be a crate of apples or grapefruits going into them, and they would just sit there. They wouldn't do anything. It was just a disaster. So it just wasn't.
I suppose if you're approaching it as a hotelier and want to use it in the garden, it would make sense. Yeah. I guess.
Absolutely. But
that type of project to have less control.
Yeah. I would like this sort of situation here does my head in. It's not what it's meant to be. It's going to take ages to actually heat up. It's sat there with the lid off. It just doesn't work right. And for the hotels and things like that, I wish I'd just brought maybe almost the same size but brown wheelie bins. That was easier for transporting and easier to probably have some sort of bay system, possibly better than the one we've got, and probably just did compost bays with the bulk stuff coming from the restaurants. But that project is kind of finished.
If anyone is interested on the composting side of things, Jake and Kate, who are growers over in Glenelg, they have a croft over there. They did a really good, sorry, that's me getting a text message. They did a really good talk about their own compost bins and how they have the 3 bays and what's good to put in on like a croft scale or a domestic scale. So that's quite a good resource, and they are available now to watch online. Someone's asking about rats.
Yes, so I just saw that. So again, these aren't probably ideal. They would attract. At the bottom, they've got a front lid, which leaches quite a lot of lovely smelling black goo. So you probably need somewhere for that to drain onto. Like I've got it on my lawn at the house, and all around it is brilliant lush green grass and a pile of dark yucky material. So I try and put it on a draining bit of gravel or something. Another wee tip for the hot bins is I actually just have it on a bit of wood or something behind it, just to ever so slightly put it in an angle, so that any liquid at the bottom does drain away a wee bit quicker, particularly up here for the amount of rain that we get. It's just a lot wetter, so stuff drains away a wee bit quicker. And ventilation as well. Try and keep the wee vents so the air's circulating and it doesn't get too anaerobic. Whilst we're here, rhubarb. So it's not we had this in tyres, 4 sort of quite large tyres. It didn't. I'd have one decent batch, maybe early springtime, and then that would be it. It would just look this horrible anemic looking thing. And rhubarb should be really, really easy to grow. So I was like, right, we had some of these wood blocks left. So I got the boys to build that, and yeah, that's been 3 weeks from when it was, I cut everything off, so it was just the stumps into the soil, wee bit of manure underneath, and yeah, look at it now. So tyres are not good for growing, except peas. Peas do quite well in them, sort of. Rats, yes, the hot bins would attract rats to hotel areas. Again, that's probably why I'd go for the brown bins, so they're a wee bit more sort of, the brown bins that I think like Inverness have. We don't have them here. Something along those lines, something that can drain, but you can't get, beasties can't get into them too easily. So possibly something along those lines would be my advice for anyone who's got some sort of retail restaurant or things like that.
And it would you be only putting on like you wouldn't be putting cooked food or like
for the hot bins? Yes, you can put cooked food into them.
Okay.
Personally, I don't, just because I don't know if maybe it's just our climate and it's very different to where the chap that designed them lives down in South England, but they get very wet quite quickly if they're not heating, and they can lose heat quite easily. They come with a wee sort of starter kit and a wee plastic bottle that you can put boiling hot water in. You shove the bottle into some composting material, and then you quickly put some more composting material on top, and that kick-starts the heat process, and you leave it in a few days and boom, it kick-starts the temperature. Myself and our treasurer we had a wee bit of a competition of who could get the highest temperature, so we were back and forth emailing pictures of the temperature gauge on top, and he got his up to 75 degrees, so he won. But he was putting a wee bit of chicken manure in, so he cheated. But yeah, they're good for domestic, not for, I wouldn't recommend them for any retail side of things. Rats, I don't have issues with rats at all up here. Mice, huge amount of mice up here. Particularly in the school tunnel, I put out traps for the whole of January, February, and just try and kill off as many as I can. I should say maybe this small area here that we're going to turn into a small apple orchard. And I was told the other day, if you have 5 trees or more, you can call it an orchard. So we're going to try and get 5 trees put in here, and they'll be quite low. We'll probably put some sort of large strainer here, maybe one in the middle and then one at the end, and put maybe 3 wires going across. I might get in touch with Phil about this. He might know a bit more about it. So yeah, we're hopefully going to have some apple production going along here. I should say, maybe going back to the fruit things, I've got strawberries. These are old ones. I didn't want to chuck out, because for strawberries you're meant to sort of get rid of them after maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, just because they can often get some viruses and diseases. So these are now 5 years old. So I put them into fish boxes at the end of last year and just sort of left them. And they did okay. They did quite a lot. I just use them here for the Corrie Capers kids groups going past, and they can just have a wee nibble on a few strawberries. But inside the tunnels, I've got a new stock of strawberries. I've just managed to put on some other ones for other folk to replenish their stock. Irrigation, so this tap and the tap over there, and then where that new tunnel is behind there will all be on our burn water system rather than mains. And if I go back up to the car park, you'll see a network of blue pipes. So this kind of goes off and then heads up behind our office. And it goes up to these water tanks that you can just, if I stop moving, you can just see up in the background. I'll try and wander up. And yeah, this runs off a burn. Obviously our project was all about being green, so we wanted to be off grid. And we had to be because we couldn't afford to get mains water in. So yeah, the pipe work comes from a wee dam installed. This black pipe, and then it kind of goes off and round, comes from the campsite. We did get some money eventually to put in some sort of drinking water system, just with the site becoming a lot busier than it was originally. I was hoping it became a priority. I'll just go into the chat.
There was another question about would it be worth installing a polytunnel for someone that lived by themselves, do you think?
Definitely. You'd be very self-sufficient. Possibly maybe not the size of the ones that I was recommending. But yeah, definitely put in maybe one ever so slightly smaller than, like the ones that we were just on in. Definitely they'd be quite good, I think. Just trying to see what other questions there were. Waste put through the garden shredder would be better in the hot box. Yeah. If we put anything in it, obviously if you're peelings, well, that's quite small, so that's fine. Here people are wanting to get home because they've probably been here a few hours doing their plots, and they just don't have, they just pile it in. I sat and took out corn, the big tall 7-foot corn stalks, and I just sat there secateuring them into bits, so that they do compost down a lot quicker. So I'll just close this so you can see. So yeah, the water pipe fills up these 3 tanks. We had to increase it just because we kept getting more polytunnels. We didn't have enough water stored for usage. It's very temperamental, our water. I'll try and wander along. I've got my new trainers on, so I don't want to get too wet.
I have a question, please.
Yep.
With regards to the setup and how the plots are allocated out, do you rotate them every year?
No. So we've probably got about 6 or 7 folk that have stayed with us since the beginning, and they've still got their plot from when we started. It becomes theirs. Yeah, I'm sure a few of you, maybe from down south or in the more central belt, sometimes plots can be generational, and there's become part of the family almost. So we kind of want to create something similar here. So yeah, no, if you want it, you keep it as long as you like, and you keep your one. Try not to move folk around, particularly for a lot of people have their planting plans, so they know what they've done in the past. So that they know what they've grown. So this is our wee fairly basic dam, an old slab from Juicens, initially donated. We cut a wee section out the top of it, put a wee filter box in, and then a wee tube comes out the filter, connects it underneath, and then obviously goes down and fills the tanks. It's ridiculously sensitive. Like at the moment, I should probably have been up and emptied the gunk. You'll now see how dirty the gunky stuff is. Just at this time of year, the water's not flowing quite as much, and a lot of algae and gunk builds up. clogs it up, and then you have to try and filter it all out. And yeah, it does need a bit of maintenance, almost weekly, to keep it going. And then sometimes when the water has stopped going through, or if the pipes come loose, you have to put it all back again and then disconnect it from the tanks, walk down that glen so that the gravity really pushes it down. And then once it's flowing again, you stick your finger at the end of the pipe and walk back across, trying to keep that pressure, and then fill up the tanks. So yeah, I think that's the growers hub.
Thank you very much. It's amazing to see what's all happened there, and it's nice to hear that, you know, the community's getting involved with it and everyone kind of mucks in. Does anybody have any other questions? There's lots of people saying thank you, and some have had to go already.
Yeah, I should maybe say our toilet that we've had to get, just because it increased. It's that wee building there, and it's a compost toilet. So it's not in mains. So in those black bins, again, hot bins, the waste goes in. We don't use this for going onto any of the raised beds. We'll probably use them for mulching around the hedges and ornamental areas. But yeah, it's quite a good wee, it's just, yeah, very basic, sort of, won't show any details, but yeah, you don't stand. Gents use that, and ladies use that for obviously number ones. And the liquid just goes off into a drain round the back and sort of naturally goes off into the ground, and then obviously the rest of the waste gets composted and gets put into the bins. So yeah, I should say we use our office meeting area so groups come here for their tea break. We've got Flourish has their own sort of notice board, my high school, Poetry High School group, and then Broadford primary group. So we do a lot of planning and organising and stuff as well. So yeah, I think that's the Growers Hub.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and yeah, explaining everything for us. It's been really interesting to hear about everything. And the other thing I was just going to add, when you were talking about Donald Murdy, so I know that he was worked at the Scottish Crofting Federation, and they actually published the Crofters Handbook.
Yes, I've got it right here.
And they've actually
extremely
got more now, so you can go to their website and get them as well. But is there any other resources that you
RHS online, you know, if I'm down in the Polytunnels, I'm not going to walk back up here and start looking up a book. You know, I'd probably do that when I got in. RHS online, Google is extremely handy, but this particular book is good for the West Coast. Lots of small helpful tips, horticultural crofting. Yeah, it's brilliant. And Donald and a few other guys, John Bannister over in Kyle Ray. I've had quite a few. In fact, there's Donald himself. We've had Audrey Littert, she's consultant. She was amazing amount of knowledge from her. So yeah, it's a great I definitely recommend it. The Horticultural Handbook for Crofters. It's extremely handy.
Well, I think we shall let you get off. There's not been any more questions, just lots of thank yous and a comment about how spotless the toilet looks as well.
Yeah, to be fair, it needs clean tomorrow and it's my turn, so yeah, it's tomorrow morning's task.
But thank you very much.
Cheerio everyone, thank you.